And we're going to talk about how you can use artificial intelligence in your day-to-day life. We all think AI is intended for big businesses who've got big developer teams and can afford to throw money at this issue. AI is regarded as the cutting edge of the fourth industrial revolution. But of course, 4IR has a bad name in this country after the cheerleading that we've had from our former Minister of Communications, who unfortunately cast AI as the solution to all the country's problems without the government facilitating the enabling environment for AI and other fourth industrial revolution technologies to flourish in this country. What we have to understand about the fourth industrial revolution is that it's made up of numerous underlying technologies, and each of those technologies has a different trajectory, different use cases, and different success factors. And that's why when you champion 4IR for its own sake, you will only embarrass yourself, as we have seen on numerous occasions. So let's hone in on one of those underlying technologies, artificial intelligence, and how individuals can leverage it and not just large organizations. To start with, this slide designed itself, not too bad looking. Personally, I don't have much of a design sense, so it's wonderful if the technology does it for me. So I'm going to show you how that happened. This is what I typed in as a heading in PowerPoint. And if you look to the side, you'll see a little button that says Design Ideas. I clicked on that, and up came all of these options for the slide. And of course, I selected the top one, so that's what the slide looked like. But I didn't even have to think about the design. The software did it for me. This slide also designed itself. I simply selected an image from Unsplash, which is a website that provides royalty-free images that you can use. You don't even have to credit them. I do like to credit them because they provide such powerful images when I'm looking for something very specific. And by selecting that particular image, typing that headline in, clicking on alt text, I can show you how the artificial intelligence actually works within PowerPoint. So PowerPoint interprets the image. As you can see, it says there on the side, person holding brown pencil. And that was the artificial intelligence built into PowerPoint that evaluates the image I've pasted in, and then matches that image based on its interpretation of what's in it to the design of the page. And up comes this range of options on the side for the design. And I choose one of those. And this is what the ultimate slide looks like. Now let's take a quick coffee break. While I mentioned that also built into PowerPoint is a video selection tool where you can choose to insert a video from a range of sources, including from your own computer or online, but also from a stock video library that is now built into PowerPoint, provided by Microsoft at no cost. There's no royalties payable. You don't even have to credit the creator, but I really do believe that this image should have a credit for whoever created it, because I can almost smell that coffee. All I typed in was coffee, and it came up with a range of animated images. Now, for some of my presentations, it gets quite technical. And for example, I talk about supply chain technology, and I type in supply chain, and up comes an image of a production line, but animated. That gives me a wonderful way of introducing the topic that doesn't make it sound too boring. Same with traffic management, for example. You type in traffic, and up comes amazing animations of traffic in action in different styles, formats, and so on. But as you can see, just the image alone is quite powerful. And the reason that one is able to do all of this is that Microsoft has built machine learning tools into its software, not just PowerPoint, but Word as well. In the past, you could match that level of technology by typing words in and doing searches. So you had to describe what was in the photo. And the intention of that was to fill in something called an alt tag, A-L-T, a tag that went with images, typically on websites, so that someone who was visually challenged could use text-to-speech technology to tell them what was on that page, and it would then interpret the image, tell them what was in the image, and they would understand what is being viewed or what is being shown on that page. And thanks to that technology that was intended to assist the visually impaired, we now have a tool available for everyone to enhance their presentations and documents. This is just the beginning. What we often find with these kind of technologies is that they tend to result in severe shipwrecks as people become either too dependent on them or they are oversold and overhyped. And the result is that the system crashes. So, for example, there have been many attempts to assist people in generating speeches. And we have these examples. Speech Shark, an amazing app that does the work for you. And as I mentioned here, you probably haven't heard of it. Why? Because it died a terrible death. And speeches.com, find the word you need, automated, custom made, also died a terrible death. It might have been resuscitated subsequently, but these were tools that were before their time and also overpromised at a high cost and therefore underdelivered, disappointed the potential users and chased them away. But that is the past. What's coming next is huge. It's literally infinity and beyond in terms of the range of options that artificial intelligence is opening up. This is a chart from CB Insights showing the top 100 AI tools of 2021. And this is early 2021 still. And what I want you to look at is the range of categories that are being revolutionized by artificial intelligence. So if you look at the top, healthcare, smart home, consumer devices, retail, media, supply chain. And that already tells you that it's not only about the corporation. The supply chain and logistics, yes. Retail, it affects every one of us. Consumer devices, it's going to be in our hands. The smart home, those who can afford it at this stage. And healthcare, of course, will revolutionize the future of health, of well-being, and hopefully of treatment of patients. That's just the first line of categories. You carry on down this chart and you can see just how much there is. So have a look at this in terms of giving a talk or preparing my talk for me. NLP, which is not neuro-linguistic programming, it's natural language processing and conversational AI, is transforming the ability to present content to audiences when you yourself are not comfortable with presenting. This is a chart showing the number of artificial intelligence startups that received venture capital investment. And again, the point isn't to show you all the companies, but all the categories of artificial intelligence that are being revolutionized. And what's particularly significant for the individual is that bottom row, virtual assistants, recommendations, video recognition, and at the end, speech translation. So the last one is going to be fantastic for people traveling. Already, you can use your smartphone to translate what someone is saying to you directly, but it's very inaccurate. And people have to talk slowly and pause while the translation happens. I just recently tested a in-ear translation device called Time Kettle, which uses artificial intelligence supposedly to translate as the person is talking to you. But again, it requires that person to talk very slowly. It requires you to have your smartphone active and linked to those earbuds. But that is the beginning. In the future, and I'm talking about in the next 5 years, that technology will mature to the level where I literally can be talking to someone in China who's talking Chinese, I'm talking in English, and we understand each other because we have those buds in our ears. The second one from the left, recommendations, is something that is already being used by all of us, but the technology is still very clunky. So, for example, when you look at Google News and what it recommends for you to read, it is the most frustrating tool in the world because it thinks that because you read one article on one topic, that's all you want to read about, or you want to read every single article on that topic. You don't. You were interested in it for that moment, or you did a search on a particular product and you bought that product and now you're done with it. And now that's all you're being shown. Every time an ad pops up while you're using a free app, it's showing you ads for stuff you've already bought. So it shows you that a lot of the artificial intelligence tools are still in their infancy. They are sometimes not just useless, but they are counterproductive, and they actually create consumer resistance and consumer resentment to what is being exposed to them. So that's partly a warning to businesses out there not to depend too heavily on AI, or not to let AI take over because you're going to lose your customers. But for you and I, the message there is that don't expect AI to do it all for you, and don't trust all AI at this stage. But this is a clear indication of what is to come. The Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence did an analysis of AI papers that are being published that are peer-reviewed. In other words, they are academically respected papers on artificial intelligence. And what you see here is the rise in AI papers from China versus the fall or the plateauing of AI papers from the United States. And it shows you that in 2020 and 2021, China has caught up to the USA in AI papers. It's not quite as simple as that, though. When you look at the second chart, you look at the share of the top 1% of AI papers, that refers to the papers with the most citations from other papers. In other words, other researchers citing that paper because it is foundational. In other words, the content of a paper is so significant that it starts being cited by all other papers. There, the USA is still well ahead, and Silicon Valley, in fact, still rules in terms of foundational AI. But again, you can see the catch-up is happening. And it's expected by 2025 that China will overtake the USA. And when you look at the extent to which AI is being incorporated into low-cost technology being manufactured in China, that tells you the impact it's going to have on us in the very near future. In other words, in the next 4 years, we can expect to see a flood of artificial intelligence tools arriving in our hands or in our lives. Something to bear in mind, however, is that this is really a far forward or a lengthy process in terms of projecting where we are going, because when a new technology is highlighted in an academic research paper, it still takes up to around 5 years before it goes truly mainstream. So the big transformation is going to happen between 2025 and 2030. But in the meantime, the extent to which these papers are already being produced and have already been produced over the last 2 decades gives you a sense of how much AI is arriving in our lives right now. So I want to ask a quick question. I'm going to ask you to put into the chat box, how many countries do you think boast an artificial startup industry? And I'm going to give you 3 choices. 31, 51, or 71? Quick show of hands or a show of numbers in the chat box. How many do you think, how many countries have an AI startup industry? And we have 71 leading, 51, 31 trailing behind, 51, 31, and the average is working out at around 51. And I'm going to take you out of your misery right now, and I'm going to tell you that the number of countries with a startup industry is 71. That's massive, 71. Half the countries in the world have an AI startup industry. So it's not just China and the United States, it's worldwide, including South Africa. This is an article that happened to appear just on Sunday in the Sunday Times. I did an overview of all the insurance technology companies that were getting venture capital in South Africa. So usually when we hear about VC and AI, we're talking Silicon Valley and sometimes Shanghai. But now we're also talking Cape Town and Johannesburg. The Silicon Belt is becoming real, and insurance and financial technology is driving it. And one of the best examples is a company called Naked, which has built up the insurance system from the basics, from the ground up. 3 actuaries started it. They'd all worked in the insurance industry. They understood how it worked, but they also understood what doesn't work and why the insurance industry is so behind the times. And the reason for that is that no major insurance company can go back to the basics. They've got such massive legacy systems that they have to keep building on it. And they can't do something as simple as allowing you to change your address in real time, for example. Naked have taken it a lot further. They allow you to even pause your insurance. So this came into its own when lockdown began last year. They were the only insurance company that allowed people who had their cars parked in their garages to simply pause their accident insurance because they weren't going to be using their cars for the next few months. Massive savings resulted, and that forced the insurance industry as a whole to offer discounts to their customers for specific kinds of insurance that wouldn't apply during lockdown. But it was led by this organization that uses a simple app that allows you to manage your insurance on the fly, literally. And that's just one of the many elements of artificial intelligence being brought into travel, insurance, and transport. This is a tool that's available on any of your smartphones. If it's a smartphone that's not more than about 4 or 5 years old. And this is a combination of Google Maps and something called Google Lens and various other tools built into Google Maps and into the Android system that uses mapping to identify where you are in an urban environment and draws on the information in its own mapping system to tell you what you're looking at any given moment. Now, this has been talked about for many years and is now a reality. So it assists you when you're in a strange environment or you can't find the location, and you simply point your phone at your environment and it tells you what you're looking at. But more than that, it also, and this is probably the real intention from Google, it also brings in special offers from people who have bought advertising using this system, tied into the system, to try and get you to pop into their restaurant or into their shop to take advantage of a special offer at that given moment. Now, Google's, or at least Android's, camera system now also uses something called Google Lens that allows you to take a photo of a product and then do a search online for that product. I have tried it and I find it pretty clunky. And in fact, I've never found that it's taken me to a product that I want to buy. But in the future, that'll happen. If you, for example, break an object in your home and you want to replace it, take a photo of that object, do a Google Lens search, and you might even be able to order it immediately for delivery the next day or even same day, depending which service you're using. But this gives you a sense of the extent to which your phone is drawing on artificial intelligence to assist you in very basic areas of your life. But now it goes further. This is probably my favorite artificial intelligence tool that I've discovered in recent months. It's called Magic Earth. That is a simple smartphone. It can be any smartphone made since 2016. All you need is to download a free app from magicearth.com, and you need a little suction device and a holder that affixes your smartphone to your windscreen, much like a dash cam. You can buy a dash cam right now that will video anything that's in front of your vehicle. But that dash cam doesn't have much intelligence built into it. Some do. Some, for example, will record if you go over a pothole or if you bump into another vehicle. It will then start ensuring that it saves the video of what happened just before and just after. And if you have an altercation with traffic cops, for example, it will pick up that there's a noise in the environment or additional noise or a different noise, and it will start recording that as well. But what Magic Earth does is it turns your smartphone into a artificial intelligence-driven dash cam that also matches the kind of technology built into truly expensive cars. So a car costing R1 million upwards these days is expected to have artificial intelligence built into it that assists you, for example, in lane departure warnings, pre-collision alerts if you're coming up too fast to the car in front of you, or the car in front of you suddenly brakes, and also pedestrian warnings. All of those are now built into the Magic Earth app at no cost whatsoever. As I say, all you need to buy to make this work in any car is that suction device that clips it to your windscreen. This brings to the cheapest car in the world the kind of technology that in the past was only affordable to the wealthy. And soon AI will make your calls for you. Now, some of you will have heard these recordings, which I'm going to play for you. This is something called Google Duplex, and it was launched 3 years ago. And I want you to listen to these conversations. This is artificial intelligence making an automated call for you. You have said to your phone, hey, Google, and I hope that didn't suddenly activate all your smartphones out there, but you then tell it to make a call to a particular hair salon to make an appointment for you. And this is how it's supposed to work.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
That was for the hair appointment. Then the restaurant booking.
See how may I hear you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people? When?
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually, we leave there for upper 5 people. For 4 people, you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
For when, tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Both of those voices were generated by artificial intelligence. And I'm not talking about the voices on either side of the conversation. I'm talking about the people who made the calls, the woman in the first call and the man in the second call. And the entire conversation was machine driven. The person on the other side had no idea. Of course, those were very carefully staged calls made by Google to demonstrate the technology. When individuals try it, it tends to be very hit and miss. It's only slowly rolling out. It's now available in 49 US states, for example, so not yet available in South Africa, but it's coming very soon. AI will make your calls for you. But I'd just like to introduce you to the gentleman behind that particular tool. This is in May 2018, Yaniv Leviathan and Matan Kalman, who led the project. They made that call to book the meal. At least they use artificial intelligence to make that call. And this is a meal they enjoyed after booking their table. Any of you could be Yaniv or Matan in the future. If you detected any sarcasm, it would be because you might have been using artificial intelligence yourself to listen to this talk. Researchers at the University of Central Florida have shown that AI can detect sarcasm in social media automatically. It would be very useful for those people who suffer from SOHF, sense of humor failure, when they respond to sarcastic comments on Facebook or on Twitter, not realizing that someone is being sarcastic. We all have those friends. Some of us are those friends. But let's talk about some more fun and games. This is one of my favorite current examples of artificial intelligence for pure entertainment. And this is from a tool called Fantasy Football Fix, which is designed to bring artificial intelligence to fantasy football predictions. So I don't know how many of you play the English Premier League Fantasy League, but it's one of the biggest fantasy leagues in the world. It has 7.7 million players right now. It's massive in South Africa. South Africa, I think, is a 10th most active country in the world on fantasy football. And every year, this particular service, Fantasy Football Fix, has further advanced their AI tools. They now are telling you that you can become the Pep of FPL. That's Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City. After this past weekend's results, people wouldn't quite want to be the Pep of FPL, more like the Tuchel, the Chelsea manager, or for that matter, the new Spurs manager, or even the Man United manager. Definitely not the Arsenal manager. Sorry for Arsenal fans out there. They could do with some fantasy football fix. But the irony of this is that Pep is well known for severe rotation of his team. You can never predict what he's going to do next. And artificial intelligence certainly can't do it. So it actually encapsulates the dichotomy between AI prediction and the chaos of the real world. But I'll just show you some of the examples of what the Fantasy Football Fix introduces in terms of artificial intelligence. And you can see there's 5 options that they have of what you can do: optimizing your game week, comparing yourself against the elite, calculating optimal rotation, etc., etc. So this past weekend was the first game week of this season, and I used a combination of tools, including the Fantasy Football Fix, and the result was my highest ever points in a single game week. But it doesn't tell the full story because everyone else is also using these tools. The result was that my ranking for the game week was 377,647, which if you're using artificial intelligence, you would expect to be more like in the top 10,000 perhaps out of the 7.7 million. It's still respectable. This is still in the top 2 or 3%, which is pretty cool. But it just shows you that when everyone is using these tools, they're not a differentiator anymore, but they are a ticket to the game. So then a question a lot of people are asking is, with the complexities of remote learning and the like, can artificial intelligence do my kids' homework? And the answer is absolutely. Socratic.org is a new homework artificial intelligence tool. It's not intended to do the homework for you, but rather to assist and to solve homework problems that parents can no longer address. When most of us were at school, for example, maths was about algebra and geometry, and maybe a bit of trigonometry. These days, kids are expected to do calculus in high school maths, and there are very, very few parents who can help the kids with calculus. So Socratic.org steps in to help fill that hole. But even in other areas, so for example, in English literature, the level at which kids have to do analysis today would boggle the mind of most parents who remember it from a few decades ago. Socratic.org is now the AI tool that helps parents regain their self-respect when helping kids with their homework. Let's talk about AI and the future. Use these tools, but don't be a robot. That is Pepper, an old friend of mine who unfortunately has just met his or her demise. Pepper was being rolled out in fast food restaurants across Japan at the rate of a few thousand every month. And it became a standard tool for people to be served by this cute robot. I myself have a long-standing relationship with Pepper, and I was very sad to hear of his/her demise. The reason for that demise is that Pepper is just too damn expensive. Nedbank brought Pepper into South Africa as a brand ambassador, and it cost them something like 750,000 Rand to bring it in and to adapt it to their specific needs. And all it really ended up being was a walking web browser menu. So you could call up a menu on Pepper's chest where a tablet showed you what the options were that you could do with Pepper. And it was no more complex than a basic web browser menu that the bank might have offered. So why I mention that is because any of you who uses Vodacom could be a user of Toby as well, the Vodacom chatbot. But don't think you're talking to Toby Shapshak here, because it has only a fraction of the intelligence of Toby. You are talking to a piece of software. And the problem with this software is that within 3 questions, Toby is already stumped, and very basic questions. This was an inquiry about getting bad signal, checking an outage in the area. Toby not being able to resolve it, not being able to connect the questions to what was happening out in the real world, and then referring you back to a human being. So humans are still required to assist the robot. This is Sofia the robot, who visited South Africa a few years ago. You may know about Sofia as the first robot in the world to be given citizenship of a country. When Saudi Arabia announced that Sofia had been made a Saudi citizen, that meant a robot had more rights in Saudi Arabia than a live woman, which is truly sad and tragic, and symbolize also the extent to which a robot is not a human being or a replica of a human being. I was invited to put questions to Sofia when she visited, and they sent me sample questions that I could ask her. So I said, no, I'd rather ask my own questions. Those are very boring questions that I could simply type into Google and it would answer me. So I sent alternative questions and they promptly canceled the interview with Sofia. So what it told me was that Sofia was ready to answer pre-programmed questions, but was not going to engage with me on anything really interesting. So she's appeared on TV, addressed the UN, been granted citizenship of Saudi Arabia, but she and her friends like Pepper remain a novelty. That's a photo from my honeymoon with Pepper when I first met him/her in Budapest a few years ago. And I said to Pepper, hello, Pepper. And Pepper said, hello, human. And I was captivated. But unfortunately, the relationship never went beyond that. And when I met Pepper again, when she came to South Africa, courtesy of Nedbank, he didn't remember me. And that told me that this was not going to be a long-term relationship. So I was not surprised when Pepper decided to duck out of all relationships altogether. Because this is what a real robot looks like. A robot, in other words, a device that automatically performs tasks, is really a machine that has to be designed for specific purposes rather than to look cute and fuzzy. And because these robots don't look cute and fuzzy, people tend to not associate them with being robots. A robot to them has to have the face of a Pepper, or not quite Sofia, that's a bit creepy, but something cute and fuzzy like that. But the real robots are not so fuzzy after all. So where are we going to see artificial intelligence used most actively in the coming decade? We get a sense from where the big growth is coming in job demands of the coming decade. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, in the 2020s, the biggest shortage of people being placed in jobs is going to be in individual and family services first, then computer systems design and related services, then home healthcare services, then consulting, and finally outpatient care centers. What's fascinating about this is that 3 of the top categories of job shortages or job demand are going to be entirely human related. And that tells you artificial intelligence is not going to take away jobs. It is going to have to augment these jobs, because none of number 1, 3, or 5 can be replaced by artificial intelligence, but they can be supported by AI. So if you have AI that has your back while you are performing these functions, you'll be able to perform these functions far more effectively. 2 and 4, you'll find in many cases, AI will actually take away some of those jobs. In labor-intensive tasks in manufacturing, AI and robots will take away many jobs. But the main job demands of the coming decade are going to be heavily human-oriented, because people not only will want the human touch in the decade ahead, but after all the social distancing of the last year and a half, and probably the next year and a half, they're going to need that human touch more than ever before. And that means that we must use artificial intelligence to support our communication and not replace our communication or our interaction with individuals. The advances of the last 3 years have been phenomenal, and some of them are tools that I cannot survive without. So, for example, I gave a talk on innovation in speaking recently, showing these artificial intelligence tools. So I opened up Otto.ai while I was trying to conceptualize my talk, and I began rambling into the computer. And Otto automatically converts my speech into text and provides a transcript for me. Now, in the past, I would have to record my comments, say I talk for an hour, record it, and then sit and transcribe it probably over about 5 or 6 hours. And that applies to the interviews that I do as well. In the past, I would record an interview and then spend hours transcribing it. Now, the moment the interview is finished or my dictation into my computer is finished, I have the transcript waiting for me. And I can then edit that transcript, work on it, pull ideas from it, and the like. So brainstorming and stream of consciousness, talking and idea generation suddenly becomes that much more practical. Still in the presentation mode, Adobe has an artificial intelligence tool called Sensei, which will take your videos and convert them to match the subject. It'll convert the color values of your clips based on the lighting in your environment, and it will adjust music levels for soundtracks that you might want to use to match the dialogue or the kind of content that you're presenting in your talk. Then there's a tool called Descript that takes the transcript of your talk. So you prepare a talk, you rehearse it, Descript takes the transcript that you might have generated from Otto, for example, and then tells you where you can fine-tune the talk and improve it. Even in PowerPoint, you have a tool similar to that. You have something called Presenter Coach, where it actually helps you rehearse your presentation and gives you tips as you go along, gives you feedback on pacing and pitch, and even additional or alternative words that you can use to fine-tune and sharpen your presentation. All in tools that are already on your computer or on your smartphone. But Descript did go too far. It introduced a tool called Overdub, which learns your speech patterns and then creates original audio using your voice. So you can then type your talk and it will turn your talk into your own voice. Here's the problem with that. With voice cloning, it then allows you to create a text-to-speech model of your voice or anyone else's voice. You can get anyone in the world presenting your talk for you. So you can, for example, choose Barack Obama's voice to present on your behalf. Or if you are a masochist or you're particularly evil, you can choose Donald Trump's voice to present your talk for you. And the result of that is that you can start creating fake voices, fake talks, and the like. You can now draw on stock voices. So we spoke about stock images earlier. We spoke about stock video. Now you have stock voices, and not just pre-prepared or pre-recorded comments, but you type the words that you want these stock voices to say. So you can fake your own speech, you can fake other people's voices, and you can have stock voices to create multiple personalities in your presentations. But you have to remember one thing, that you have something artificial intelligence doesn't have, and this is the edge that humans will have over AI for many years to come. And that is that you are human. So just be human and you will be better than artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
So Arthur, wow, I think so many of us coming into this webinar before you were online was saying, what is AI? And it's so astounding to see how much we use it in our everyday life, in everything that we do, from our laptops, desktops, cell phones, etc. So we still have time, and I would like to open the floor to any questions. Before I do so, I would like to welcome Howard Saxton to our webinar this morning. Howard Saxton from the South African Jewish Report has also hosted the most incredible webinars with really affluent people since the onset of COVID. So it's so lovely to see you join us this morning, Howard, especially in light of the fact that you're not doing a webinar for us. Our last webinar was with you live at the AutoJet offices. So thank you for joining. And you can't resist Arthur, no one can. So are there any questions? I'm happy for everybody to put their cameras on, unmute yourself, and let's spend the next few minutes of this morning really just asking those pressing questions that we have. Charlene.
I have one. Yeah, it's me. Is there an app for creating adverts, not speeches?
Are you asking if there is an app for creating adverts?
Is there one? Yeah.
Yes,
I'm sure there is. I haven't looked at that specifically. But in fact, the PowerPoint tool, the PowerPoint design idea tool will, among other things, help you create ads. It won't write the text for it, but I'm sure there are tools that will generate text for it as well. There's an app called Story AI, which is designed to help people with writer's block. So you type in the first paragraph of a story, for example, and it will generate the likely or possible ongoing event in that story based on your description. It will even find photos and headlines for you to go with that opening paragraph. So if you can do that with a story, you can certainly do that with adverts.
Thank you. And thanks for
one of the earliest examples of AI is something we've had for years and years and years. Is the traffic light. That's why it's called a robot. No, seriously.
Charlene, in answer to your
intelligence.
Well, not quite. That's an example of programming rather than AI, where you program the light to change at certain intervals. Now, what you can add to that, and what you do get, is something called machine learning, which I always refer to as the younger sibling of artificial intelligence. And machine learning learns from its environment and adapts as it goes. And robots can certainly learn to adjust their sequences based on traffic patterns. You have that already with robots that are linked to pads under the tar that picks up if there's no traffic, then it ensures that the light stays green. But in future, that will be based on what's built into the traffic light itself, and it won't require the road itself to be adapted.
Arthur, thank you for an amazing talk this morning. You certainly expanded my brain in many ways. Please explain how those Google calls that you spoke about earlier are received and acknowledged by the actual restaurant or hair salon and confirm those bookings. How does the whole process work? Just out of curiosity.
It's essentially, to try and keep it simple, it's a massive database of likely responses that they've built up, and then they use algorithms to train the system to respond to certain questions or certain requests in certain ways. So, for example, you can try that yourself with Google Assistant on an Android phone, or if you have an iPhone, you can use Siri to ask Siri for directions, for example. So you say to Siri, navigate me to Howard's house, because we all know that Howard does amazing catering. So Siri then looks into your contacts database to check which Howard it might be, and then links that to Howard's address that it's got either on the map or in the system, and then navigates you to Howard's house. Hopefully also warns Howard that you're coming so that you can organize that awesome catering. But all of those are examples of drawing on large bases or databases of existing information or pre-programmed information. And Google Duplex is really just an expansion of that information and of that capability. But in essence, you can experience it yourself using the tools on your own smartphone but not yet Google Duplex as such, because it's not available in this country.
So to just extrapolate that for a moment, if you phone say a bank and you get put through to, and you get this automated answering service, press 1 to go here, press or 0 to wait for the operator. Does that work on the same principle?
Not at all. That's what they call IVR, interactive voice response, and that is based on a very fixed menu of options, and it doesn't, in most cases, it doesn't recognize what you are saying. There are some of these systems that ask you to say yes or no, and then it uses voice recognition to interpret the yes or no. But that's as far as those systems go. They certainly don't use artificial intelligence. In most cases, they don't even use machine learning. They're very blunt instruments, very, very basic programming. In effect, it's the equivalent of choosing items from a menu on a website, and they've merely added voice voice functionality to it, but you are selecting 1, 2, or 3 from a menu where you might have been online and clicking on that menu.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip. Good question.
So, Arthur, we have a question in the chat box from Dean Marcus. He said Elon Musk has issued significant warnings against AI and its proliferation. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Elon Musk is probably one of the most brilliant people on the planet, but he's also one of the most deranged people on the planet. And when he makes that kind of warning, you've got to take it with a severe pinch of salt. He's also, among the many industries that he is trying to transform, is the wiring or the linking up of the brain to machines. So neural links between human and machine. So if he's a pioneer in that area, you also have to understand that he's a pioneer in artificial intelligence as well. And he's using AI very aggressively. We'll probably hear a lot more from him on it. But he also recognizes the dangers of AI gone wrong. And if AI is misused, as it has already been misused, it's going to cause a lot of harm. An example of where it's caused harm is with Facebook and its algorithms, for example. When we posted this, the ad for this talk on Facebook, someone commented how Facebook had used AI to identify them as having engaged, I think it was in hate speech or something. The point there was that the AI used by Facebook is sometimes used incredibly bluntly, incredibly badly, and incredibly damagingly. And the classic example is the extent to which it reinforces people's searches for specific kinds of information that also supports misinformation. So someone who's an anti-vaxxer, and if there are any anti-vaxxers on here, I don't want to hear from you. You're welcome to unfollow me on all social platforms because I believe you're dangerous. The anti-vaxxer finds Facebook to be a highly supportive environment because the artificial intelligence built into Facebook reinforces the content that they are looking for. And the more they look for anti-vaccine content, the more Facebook will gravitate towards giving them a comforting and supportive environment for their views. So it's a great example of AI gone wrong and AI doing great harm to humanity as well. So from that point of view, Elon Musk is absolutely correct. But in terms of spelling the end of the world, that's, I believe, him being a little deranged.
So we're on 12 p.m. and Arthur, I know that we've scheduled an hour for your webinar.
I'm happy to talk further if people have more questions.
Okay, great. So
I just want to say, Tracy, to Arthur, thank you so much for an outstanding talk. It always, I'm always overwhelmed with the type of knowledge and update that you bring with you. I mean, we as an organization have been looking at AI and artificial intelligence in and the whole impact on education and skills development. And I keep on thinking, always fascinated to come and listen to you, because I know there'll be some new stuff that I haven't, and it means my phone is going to be loaded with more apps because of it. That I have to test and try. But one of the things that I spoke to Tracy about, and that would be a good lead from this talk, is really looking at how this technology is going to change the profession, the job market. I think there are many people sitting here listening and saying, how is this going to affect where I am sitting now in my position, at the job that I'm at, or if I'm a student, where am I going to, in my studies of accounting or law or whatever it is, medicine, how is this AI and Internet of Things and all the other stuff going to affect the way I'm going to be operating? So I think this is something that's a question that probably needs a whole few webinars just on that. And I know that you've got the knowledge and the skills, and it's something that we really would like to work with you, because I've spoken to soldiers, and that's something they're really looking at, because they're looking at themselves, they're taking the accounting, the medicine, the normal sort of professions, but where is this technology coming in going to impact their future? So that's something that I'm really looking forward to explore with you as well.
I look forward to chatting further about that. But the one very basic piece of advice that I give to people with regard to AI and what they study is, whatever field you study, make sure that there is an element of AI built into those studies. So, for example, in law, it's a great example where AI tools are being integrated rapidly and changing the role, for example, of the person doing articles. They're no longer having to search case studies and precedents, because AI does that for them. But what concerns me is that universities haven't caught up, and they, for example, haven't integrated AI effectively into what impact it will have on the legal profession in the future. It should be a standard module of a law degree, for example. Same with medicine. It should be a standard module in medicine. In almost any career you can think of, and in any course you can think of that's specific to a profession, there should be a module that deals with the impact of AI on that profession. So unfortunately, tertiary education hasn't caught up to the demands of the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Arthur. I think we'll take a final question that has just popped up from Lynn. Are there apps or AI software or robot advisors that ask financial planning questions?
Yes, there are many of those. I can't think offhand of any. I know that in my discussions with SASFIN, who have also been involved in jet events, they've actually invested in one of these robo-advisors. So if you go and have a look at their portfolio of investments, you'll find one there. But there are quite a few that are available. Bear in mind, though, that just because a financial institution is using robo-advisors or software bots doesn't mean that they're effective. I know, for example, the discovery bot is almost impossible to get useful information out of, because the moment you ask it anything that's not a standard menu item, it refers you to a human being, or it refers you to their website, in fact. So it's a great example of a software bot that actually doesn't really serve a purpose. So you have a combination of those, and those that do actually give useful financial advice. But it's a very hit and miss environment at the moment. I think we can expect it to evolve very fast over the next 2 or 3 years, though.
Thank you, Arthur. And to everyone that has joined us, thank you again for your time. Arthur, spending time with you is always so valuable for every single one of us that are on the webinar. You share so much, and you teach us all so many new things that we don't often take into consideration when we just take a photo of Google Maps or whatever it is that we do. But in effect, we are using AI for all things. And I thank you always for being available for myself, Ariella, Ortese, Orjet, and for your wonderful knowledge that you share. The comments coming through, everybody is thanking you. And before we close off today, as Ariella mentioned, we look forward to working with you again really soon on our other